but I can hear you here on the laptop. So I'm going to leave you on the iPad for now. Okay. 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 Can you see my screen? Okay. Oh, Nathan, are you on GoToWebinar? Okay. I just want to know if my screen is visible.
Loading.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's me. Let me see.
All right. Hello, everyone, to this webinar by the Zest Wellness team. We'll begin in a few moments. And what you can do in the meantime is get familiar with GoToWebinar here. You can see we have a chat feature. You can interact with us in that way. With that said, give us another 30 seconds. We'll let some more people, some more of our registrants come in, and then we can get started promptly to respect all of your time. So like I said, give us a few more seconds and we'll get started with Donovan. Okay, welcome everyone to this webinar from our Zest Wellness team. My name is Nathan and I'll do the intro and outro for the presenter, Mr. Donovan Ingram. And it's interesting, there's so many ways that even for myself, I've seen webinars start, and they always kind of start with this very structured bio. But I think it'd be nice to share some personal details from what I know about Donovan and through working with him um, and what I've learned from him. And so, it's amazing how much our presenter, Donovan, cares about contributing to his community and helping the well-being of others. His personal wellness philosophy, and I've wrote this down before, is why wait tomorrow when you can start today? And so Donovan comes to us with a number of years in education and experience in the health and wellness field. Even the community, to give some specifics, in 2017, he was a part of the massive Deepak Chopra Wellness Showcase, and as well for anyone in the Bahamas too, he was the chairman in 2018 for the Fun Run Walk event that year. So with that said, just kind of wanted to share a little bit more on the personal side with Donovan, make things a little bit fun, because we're all here to learn from him, with the topic being control your gut. That said, Donovan, the floor is yours to open our minds and teach us something to help us with our health and wellness.
Hi, Nathan. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And for all of our listeners, I'm grateful for you guys for coming into my home today. And I'm happy for you to introduce me or invite me into your home this afternoon as well. Before we get started, I think it's important to say that on behalf of the Zest Wellness team, our hearts go out to all of those who are affected by COVID-19, and we encourage everyone to please stay safe. Practice all protocols recommended by the government in your country, but most importantly, the government in your city. Okay, please listen to those protocols so that we can get back to some form of normality as quick as possible. Without any further ado, I'm just going to jump straight into the presentation. And just one second. So today's presentation is called Control Your Gut. And forgive me, we are working from home. I am living in a condominium, so there's a bit of noise in the background. Please bear with me during that time if you hear any noise. Today's presentation is called Control Your Gut. Now, I thought it very important to have a topic on controlling your gut as it applies to nutrition, because a lot of us do not really pay attention to our burps. Question to you, when was the last time you heard yourself burp? Second question to yourself is, what did that burp smell like? So as we are going through this presentation, keep those questions in the back of your mind and constantly ask yourself those same questions. So here are some keywords that we're going to discuss throughout this presentation. The word gut will come up, probiotics, prebiotics, eructation, methane gas production, bloating, flatulence, and even the word functional foods and irritable bowel syndrome is going to be discussed. As it relates to statistics, we know from research studies that 1 in 5 persons will suffer from irritable bowel syndrome. And this is the extreme of gut health. This is a symptom that happens when you're not taking care of your gut, so we're trying to avoid this in your life. In fact, in a research study by Carolyn Canavan, and her study, The Epidemiology of Irritable Bowel Syndrome, she addressed that some 11% of the global population has IBS, which is Irritable Bowel Syndrome. She also concluded that women were more susceptible to this disease. They were 2 to 3 times more likely than men. In fact, there are a list of risk factors that you should be aware of when it comes to bad gut health. Things like being a female, you're 2 times susceptible. Age, highest for people in their teens to their 40s. Family history, if you have some genetic relations, you may be at risk of IBS. Emotional trouble and stress management issues leads to IBS. Food sensitivities like allergies or overconsumption can give you some symptoms of IBS. And also large meals, medication like antibiotics, and other digestive problems are also risk factors for bad gut health. Now, when talking about improving your gut health, it's important to understand the full digestive system. We should know that digestion starts in the mouth, and it starts when you start chewing your food. Additionally, saliva is combined with those foods that allow the food to move from the mouth, down the esophagus, and then into the stomach. It's also important to know that the gut is a hollow tube exposed to the outside of the human body. We think of the gut as inside the body, but in fact, the gut is another representation of the outside of the body. So it's like a donut. The human body has the exterior part, which is our skin, and then internally, that internal part, the circular part of the donut, would be similar to our digestive system that goes from our mouth straight out to our anus. So we do have 2 exterior portions, in case you didn't know. In fact, it is important to know that the things we eat affects our gut health. There are a lot of research studies that say if we eat things like lactose, sweeteners, fiber, carbonated beverages, or even foods that may have excessive amount of fiber, we can increase our rate of gas released from the gut. Now, other research studies also indicate that when we increase our intake of nutrients like calcium, magnesium, probiotics, and prebiotics, that significantly reduces the effects of bloating and flatulence. In fact, burping, nausea, and heartburn are direct indicators that you have some gut issues going on, whether it be the development of an ulcer or a pull-up. And these things we're going to address later down in the webinar. Also, it's important to know that for a lot of cultures, burping is considered taboo. Cultures like the Middle East, in Japan, and I know for us in the Bahamas and through the Caribbean, hearing someone burp seems a bit barbaric in some cases. But I want you to know that burping is natural, and do not be afraid to analyze your burp on a regular basis. It's also important to know that throughout the digestive system, and mostly in your small and large intestines, that's right past the stomach, you have trillions of bacteria there to help create a positive energy or positive environment for foods to be digested, and also ensure that nutrients are absorbed properly. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a little bit more details. But just so you know, those probiotics are very, very diverse genetic backgrounds. In fact, they have 150 times more genes than the human body itself. So we'll get into the discussions about that a little bit more as well. Now, when it comes to protecting the body, we spoke about things that you can consume as relates to magnesium sources. There are a whole list of foods that supply a great volume of magnesium. What we know most from a lot of research is that seaweed supplies somewhat of the highest value of magnesium of any other foods. In fact, seaweed supplies 192% of the daily value of calcium for any individual, and additionally 62% calcium for that individual. Items like oatmeal, spinach, beans, nuts, peas, bananas, seeds like lentils and legumes, avocados, salmon, whole grains, and even for those who love chocolate, yes, chocolate, raw chocolate or dark chocolate are very effective in ensuring you're getting sufficient amount of magnesium. Now, we did mention that seaweed is the highest in terms of daily value. Others that are high in magnesium will be seeds like flax seeds or chia seeds. Additionally, nuts like cashews and almonds. Other things like oatmeal will be recommended to increase your calcium and your magnesium values in your diet. This is very important when controlling gut health. If you find that your burps have a bit of an odor and you want to control your gut health, things that are high in magnesium are definitely foods you need to be consuming on a regular basis to suppress the onset of those smells, but also suppress the onset of over flatulence, which we'll get into later in this presentation. Now, another food group that's very important when it comes to controlling flatulence, but most importantly, controlling gut health, are probiotics and prebiotics. That's two different words, not the same thing. Probiotic is the actual good bacteria, and the prebiotics are considered the foods in which those bacteria need to grow and multiply. So it's important for us to have prebiotics in our diet, sources of foods like chicory, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, and onions, leeks, and cabbage. These are foods that supply nutrients to the probiotics so that they grow up to be healthy and strong and support a positive digestive system. Now, there are various forms of probiotics we can eat or foods that we can eat to get probiotics into our diet. And from the photos you see, you have pickled vegetables, so pickled cucumbers like relish. Yogurts are also very effective in assisting with that. Sauerkraut, miso, and even drinks that we can buy called kombucha. I don't know if you're familiar with kombucha, one of my favorite drinks to consume on a regular basis. And it's very important to consume probiotics on a daily basis, not just once a week or several times a week, but every day. In fact, there's a lot of research that says if you find that your gut health is unhealthy, to improve your gut health, consuming one serving of probiotics on a daily basis for 4 weeks should significantly improve the health of your gut. So that's food for thought. Now, as it relates to digestion, we spoke about digestion from the mouth as opposed to when it reaches and arrives into the stomach. So at the stomach level, what happens is the stomach starts churning, and it allows for the further breakdown of foods. And when they start churning, it starts to sort of secrete hydrochloric acid, which also assists in the further breakdown in these foods. The churning periodically helps enhance the digestion level, and food remains in the stomach for about 2 to 3 hours after. Now, the muscular valve, which is called the pyloric sphincter, which is at the lower level of the stomach, it relaxes to allow food to move from the stomach and then into the small intestine. And just during that process, what happens is the liver secretes bile to help with fatty acid breakdown, and then the pancreas also secretes additional gastric juices to support the breakdown of these foods. In the small intestine, Bile forms and the liver is secreted into the bile from the liver is secreted into the duodenum of the stomach, of the small intestine, sorry. And in this section, it is responsible for the digestion and breakdown of fats. Few species of bacteria are present in the small intestine, in fact, and there's 90% of digestion that happens mostly in the small intestine alone. A normal-sized human absorbs about 1 to 2 liters of water or dietary fluids in the small intestine on a daily basis. The small intestine, although phrased small, runs for about 20 feet for any normal individual. So it's all coiled up to expand out to about 20 feet. In the small intestine, it's where most of the nutrients are absorbed. So all of our nutrients like calcium, magnesium, iron, and all of our micronutrients are usually absorbed in the small intestine. So it's very important to know what happens in the small intestine during digestion. Now, when we talk about digestion and foods entering the small intestine, it's an ironic situation then. When the food is released from the stomach and into the small intestine, what this does is it releases gas upwards in the form of a burp. And most times when we burp after meal, that's an indicator that digestion is near complete, meaning that it's moved past the stomach, it's entered the small intestine, and a lot of digestion is about to happen. It's important after every meal to analyze, have you burped or have you not burped? And then also the smell of that burp after the meal. For most individuals, the burp causes the release of several gases. Gases like carbon dioxide, oxygen, hydrogen, but most importantly for this discussion, methane gas. Humans release these gases naturally through flatulence, and this can happen either in the form of a burp or in the form of a fart. Excuse my French. Now, in a research study by Corey Binns in Live Sciences, What Makes Us Burp, he determined that billions of bacteria in the small and large intestines help to turn undigested foods into vitamin K and vitamin B. This process then releases the smelly gases like methane in the form of flatulence. He also says that experts in Indiana University and from the School of Medicine estimates that we release a quart of nitrogen and oxygen swallowed during breathing per day. So naturally, these gases, so the oxygen and nitrogen, are usually consumed when we swallow air, right? So that's through normal breathing processes. In fact, it is normal for an individual to burp maybe 3 to 4 times after the meal. This happens because you either drank too much, or you ate too much, or you ate too quickly, or swallowed an excess amount of nitrogen or oxygen. It's important for human beings to release this air in the form of a burp or a fart to allow the digestive system to get through and break down foods to unlock nutrients. So foods are all boiled up, and when we burp, it allows the food to unwind and allow the villi of the small intestine and large intestine to increase its surface area to break down those foods and then release the nutrients we need for human function. In fact, some 30 to 60% of healthy subjects produce methane naturally. Methane is produced by anaerobic fermentation or of carbohydrates. So usually when we consume carbohydrates that are refined, like white rice or white breads or white potatoes, those refined carbohydrates, when consumed in excess, causes the body to naturally release methane gas. And that's why a lot of times we smell when someone burps or the fart, and it's like, oh my God, you just cleared the room. That's because that person is not eating a very healthy diet. In fact, that person should resort to consuming foods that are high in magnesium, like you mentioned, those green leafy vegetables, the avocados, the seaweed, and those items on a regular basis to control the release of the methane gas. Now, From the small intestine, we then move into the large intestine. And despite its name again, the large intestine, it is only about 5 feet long. Not very long, not as long as the small intestine, which is 20 feet. In fact, the large intestine helps to recover water and electrolytes. Its formation and storage of feces in that area, and it helps with the fermentation of some of the undigested food matter in the bacteria. In fact, we spoke earlier about the gut having an excess of some trillion probiotics, whether good or bad. And the research tells us that 90% of those bacteria are really in the large intestine and not necessarily the small intestine. Now, there's a mixture of good and bad bacteria. So some examples of good bacteria would be lactobacillus. Those are things you will see on the label of your yogurt, and you should see them on the label of your yogurt when you consume them. And if you're not seeing them on your yogurt, then don't buy that yogurt. Buy yogurts that literally list these probiotics. So things like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are very good bacteria for us to consume on a regular basis. Now, bad bacteria that we might find in the large intestine that we don't want there would be E. coli and Clostridium. But by consuming prebiotics, probiotics, foods high in magnesium and foods high in calcium, we will definitely eliminate bacteria, bad bacteria from our gut, and that helps to expel it out of the body through defecation. Now, there's a lot of research study that tells us that methane gas production in the gut, how it actually alters the physical and the biological structure of the human body. It leads to issues like flatulence, which is gas, again, bloating, the distension of the stomach, or that feeling of discomfort. There is also a metabolic response, whether negative or positive. Excess methane gas causes the metabolism to slow down, but a limited amount of methane gas release actually helps to support a positive metabolic response. So for those of us having issues with bloating, discomfort in the stomach when we're consuming meals or after a meal, and you're noticing that you're not losing weight or you're possibly gaining weight, this may be an indicator that your health of your gut is not intact. So reversing the diet changes or making the recommendations, like I said earlier, by enhancing foods from these food groups will definitely improve your gut health. Some individuals may even experience symptoms of pain and discomfort, and this pain and discomfort becomes so overbearing that you may need to see a medical physician. And if you are experiencing severe pain and discomfort, we encourage you, please reach out to your physician immediately. Now, from a research study from Mark Pimentel and his research of methane gas production during lactose breast testing in association with gastrointestinal diseases, he determined that increasing evidence suggests that methane gas has both a physical and a biological effect on the human gut. Methane is also associated directly with constipation. In his research study of some 551 subjects, the subgroup of some 296 individuals had IBS-specific symptoms. This research suggests that if a breath test is positive for methane gas, then this was 100% associated with constipation and constipation symptoms. So it's important to know that if you are finding that your flatulence, whether your burps or your farts give off an odor, and especially an overwhelming odor, then this can be an indicator that you are releasing methane gas from the gut and that you are possibly leading into some severe digestive issues, okay? So food for thought. It's also important to note here, a research study done by J. Delancey Costello, and his research is a journal research on breath research. He determined that hydrogen breath test is an established method for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And in fact, Usually patients produce either hydrogen or methane gas, or sometimes in some cases they produce both hydrogen and methane gas from the digestive system. In fact, experiences of methogenesis is based on various studies. Excess methane levels have more health consequences than hydrogen levels. So if you are experiencing some issues and you are releasing hydrogen, there's no issues with that. But if you are releasing methane gas, there's a significant damage to the human gut. Now, there are many different types of digestive issues you should know about. From constipation, this is when there's a blockage of feces in the large intestine. Ulcerative colitis, this is when you start to form ulcers on the lining of the large intestine or the small intestine. This really limits absorption of nutrients, which is a harmful thing. There's also the issue of colon polyps being developed. And these are little obstructions that are developing on the lining of the intestine. And these polyps can actually become cancerous. So you definitely want to be very, very, very careful of this. The fact, though, is that an unhealthy gut means that there's an excess amount of bad bacteria, and a healthy gut means that there's an excess of good bacteria. So those probiotics and those prebiotics are definitely present when you have a healthy intestinal system, okay? And for those of you that may experience severe forms of constipation, ulcers, or colon polyps, we definitely suggest you reach out to your physician and schedule a colonoscopy. So a little bit more detail on that. Again, we want to make sure that you guys are protecting yourself. You want to be eating as healthy as possible so you can avoid all these precursors when it comes to gut health. Of course, the extreme cases would then be when you've developed inflammatory bowel disease. And this means that the muscle around the large intestine kind of swells and it gets inflamed in the form of Crohn's disease or ulcers, or even celiac disease, when those villi that help with the absorption rate of nutrients, increasing the surface area, when those villi are flattened, it limits the absorption of those nutrients and definitely can increase your risk factors for colon cancer. Forgive me, my neighbors are getting a bit carried away in the back, but in any event, that brings me to the end of today's webinar, and I hope you enjoyed. I hope that you guys stay safe and practice social distancing as much as possible. From Zest Wellness, we thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Nate so he can close us out.
Awesome, Donovan. That was great. Super, super interesting. And my favorite personal part was how what you talked about was all evidence-based. You specifically referenced multiple research papers, and so when individuals learn from that, they know, hey, this is based on serious scientific research. So thank you. Before we close out, let's just take a minute here, because we're thankful for everyone who completed the survey to help add some input for us. And two questions kind of were sparked from that, specifically for you, Donovan, with the first one being, and then once you answer this one, we'll ask the second one, but the first being, are there any foods, again, you can emphasize for us in terms of gut health? Because I know, even knowing you from the past and working with you, you've talked about green tea before. So maybe any foods you recommend in individuals, healthy snacks, that sort of thing, as the first question here.
Well, Nathan, I'm happy that my information is sticking with you, because green tea is definitely one of the most important things that we can consume on a regular basis to improve our gut health. Green leafy vegetables. So let's think recipe ideas. Let's think a collection of items. We spoke about avocados and green leafy veg. We also talked about oatmeal. So a meal like a spinach salad with avocado, using a herb-based vinaigrette. Those three ingredients, the spinach, the avocado, the herbs, and the vinaigrette, definitely helps to supply magnesium and calcium to the diet to lower the onset of bad bacteria. But then when we add things like salmon or even those chia seeds, it significantly increases the magnesium and calcium levels even more. All those items are high forms of magnesiums. In terms, it provides nutrients like magnesium in its highest quantity. And so a meal of like a salmon, grilled salmon with a spinach salad and nuts is definitely an item. Recently on our social media page, if you're not following us, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Zest Wellness CGI. We recently posted a yogurt parfait recipe, which was yogurt in combination with oatmeal and some fresh fruits. Again, a great example of foods that you can consume to help to improve your gut health. And the list goes on. What I'm asking you to do, though, is take that list of those many food items that I said are high in magnesium, food items high in probiotics, and food items high in calcium. Combine them, find ingredients to make multiple recipes, but ensure that you're supplying your body with high levels of magnesium, calcium, and probiotics, not just several times a week, but every day. That helps.
Yeah, and then this question kind of combines a few of them, but essentially the overarching theme is that this topic, controlling your gut health, is it related to weight management, weight loss? What can you tell us about the relationship maybe between the two that we might not know?
Thank you. And definitely this is related to gut health and weight loss. I'm sorry if I didn't overexpress that earlier during the presentation, but in controlling your gut health or creating a healthier gut environment in the stomach, in the small intestine, and the large intestine, by creating that healthy environment internally, you're definitely improving your rate of weight loss or weight maintenance. What happens is when the gut is I guess would you say unhealthy or dirty, it causes food to line or gather along the lining of the small intestine and the large intestine, and that really limits the amount of nutrients that are really being absorbed. But by consuming foods that create a healthy gut environment, like the probiotics, the magnesiums, and the calcium, that helps to remove that filth from around the lining of the digestive system and helps nutrients to move faster or even improve the amount of nutrients moving across the cell level and into the body. Now, by increasing the amount of nutrients moving, and also increasing not only the amount, but the ease in which those nutrients move significantly improves your metabolic rate. And by improving your metabolic rate, you significantly establish better weight loss or better weight maintenance.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, Donovan, maybe let's close things out for everyone. But before we do, if you could emphasize any of the points you've already talked about, just as a kind of a last final thought for us, what would you like to tell us as our take home big point from your presentation here?
Well, I encourage everybody. I know everyone is either working from home or just being at home. And whilst you are at home during this medical crisis, we encourage you to be aware of the things you're putting into your mouth. And if you find that any of those symptoms I mentioned when it comes to bad gut health are something you experience, not maybe on a regular basis, but occasionally, I hope that the ingredients in terms of reducing the onset of these diseases, you take that on. So we encourage you to get creative with your meals. Try and eat a lot more green leafy vegetables. Definitely one of the most important things you can consume for every disease or every chronic disease. We encourage you to drink more green teas. But most importantly, if you have never eaten a yogurt or you don't eat yogurts, we encourage you to eat yogurts that list the probiotics on them. So again, the good probiotics are lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. And I don't want to call brands, but certain brands that are very good and supplying an excellent strains of good bacteria, Chobani, Activia, and Faye, I think is French.
Awesome. I tell you, Donovan, it's 1 minute you're giving us in-depth knowledge research, the next minute you're speaking to us in a different language. I don't know how you do it, but the man of many skills. So that's it for everyone. As Donovan alluded to, we're just two individuals from this awesome Zest Wellness team from Colonial Group International. And so as we are in our midst right now of launching our Virtually by Zest campaign, doing these webinars, producing the blog posts, podcasts, newsletters, all these tools that we're making available to everyone, we hope that we can help everyone through this public health time. That said, thank you to Donovan. Fantastic presentation
Thank you,
for
Nathan.
this webinar on Control Your Gut. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.